Song is about breakups. And some speculate that it's kind of I don't know if you are into teenage pop romance, but that it's about Selena and Justin Bieber's breakup back when they were 17. There are times maybe when you break up, you want to get back together, and I don't have any memory of this, but my wife tells me when we were dating, we broke up one time and got back together. And this week we celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary. But this song isn't about one of those times. It's kind of part threat, part reality. You're on your own. You're all alone. Don't count on me. Don't call me. I'm not going to grace you with my presence. Look at the words to the chorus, and maybe you don't have to look at them or listen to them. Who's going to walk you through the dark side of the morning? Who's going to rock you when the sun won't let you sleep? Who's waking up to drive you home when you're drunk and all alone? Who's going to walk you through the dark side of the morning? It ain't me. There's a loneliness that comes after a breakup or after a divorce. And if you haven't dated anybody yet, try not to walk through that. My sister, my younger sister, dated one guy and they got married. So she never had to go through that. But the fear of being alone is real. And so when she threatens with this song, you're alone now. That is a legitimate threat. And the fear of being alone, I mean, it forces people, and you may know this, and maybe this is you, it forces people to stay in bad relationships. Even abusive relationships that are clearly evil. People stay in them out of a fear of being alone. Fear of being alone, and this maybe resonates with you, even causes people to enter into a bad relationship. They're not sure how they're going to pay the bills, and they're not sure, they just can't handle those lonely nights, and so they just enter a relationship that they don't like with a person they don't like. He doesn't have a job, and it's like he doesn't have a job or concern for his own hygiene, but I love him. Think about the words to that song again. Who is going to walk you through the dark side of the morning? And begin to ask that about yourself. Maybe you're feeling lonely. Maybe you're going through a sting of a breakup. Maybe that breakup from decades ago is still haunting you. You ask, who's going to walk with me through the dark side of the morning? Jesus is. And this one truth changes so much for us in our life. Knowing that Jesus is with me changes the outcome in every circumstance, and it changes the power over another person to threaten you. I'm going to read a verse, and we'll have you turn there in a second, but in Psalm 23, verse 4, the New Living Translation says this: even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Who's walking with you through those dark times? If you're here and you don't know Jesus, you're not following Jesus, then you're right. Selena Gomez has a right to threaten you. If she's about to leave you, you better shape up. You're missing out on a good thing. But if you're walking with Jesus, then you just know. It doesn't matter what darkness is before you. You're not walking through it by yourself. If you have a Bible, you can open up to Psalm 23. If you don't have a Bible, we'd love to give you one, and so you can go to the Welcome Center in the lobby, which is straight out the doors, and they'll give you one for free. We want you to have a physical copy of the Bible for yourself. And then if you have a smartphone, you can download the Bible app, and you can look that up in the App Store and download that and carry that. We can help you set up a reading plan so you begin. If you don't know how to read the Bible, we can begin. It'll send you notifications to remind you, and we want to help you with that. So just ask if you can't figure it out. If you got the Bible app on your phone, switch over to the ESV version, and we're gonna read this passage out of the ESV because those of us who've been in church a long, long time, we remember this passage of Scripture. We memorize it one way, and so the ESV kind of more resembles the translation that we memorized when we were kids. Now, Psalm 23 is poetry, and it is a song, and it's meant to be sung, and through much of the church's history over the last 2,000 years, they used the Psalms to sing, to bring glory to God. And so we sang this morning, used some songs, and so they did this much through the ages with this book. And just think about this as you're switching over to the ESV version in your phone. The fact that there's an entire book of songs in the Bible shows us the importance of music to God. And he's not afraid of music. He's not afraid of us singing a song that plays on the radio or in church this morning. He's not overwhelmed by that. And I think it may help some of you to understand that God loves listening to music. Because God has always existed, and he's uncreated, and he's existed even before time, we can think of God like an old grandpa, and we think like God has no relevant taste in music. God doesn't understand music, and depending on maybe your church background, it can even seem like the only music God loves is a hymnal played on a slightly out of tune piano. But God gets it, and you think about your favorite music and those favorite guitar solos and instrumentals, like God appreciates that, and God enjoys that. When I think about this with music, before we jump into the scripture, and just think about maybe, and everybody kind of has their own answer to this, but like the worst genre of music that exists. When my grandfather passed away, I went through the pile of stuff that was going to the garbage, and I fished out a bunch of his CDs, his collection of polka music. And I thought, I'm going to have some fun with this, which I did later on down the line as I would pull up to a red light, and I'd have subwoofers blaring, and it was like accordions and polka music, and I'd just like sit and just pretend like I liked it. But you think about when polka music was created, I wonder if God was in heaven like, Satan! You know, and so I'm sure there's some things that God doesn't enjoy, but for the most part, he's into music, and he created music for our enjoyment and to help us to express ourselves and to help us to give glory to him. So we're going to read this song in Psalms 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. David wrote this, and David's a famous guy in the Bible, and if you have any kind of church background, and maybe you've read, there's been some books about this, but David was the shepherd boy who killed a giant named Goliath. And at this point of his life, David is an old man. He's been king for a long time. And he's writing this song speaking about all of the good things that he's seen God do in his life. Just he's near the end of his life, and he's reflecting on the goodness of God and the greatness of God and the love of God. And he's putting that here into this song. Looking back at everything, he's taking time to stop and reflect. Think about your life right now and the good things that you've seen God do in your life. I'm in awe at the things God's done in my life just this week. As I think back on this last week, I'm overwhelmed at the way that he's moving, of the things he's providing, of the things that he's accomplishing, and the prayers that he's been answering. I'm in awe. And to think back, I don't know how long I'll live, but if I live another 50 years to be at that point in my life and to be reflecting of another 50 years of God's goodness, what is that going to look like? How much of a puddle of mess am I going to be? Just gracious at the goodness of God. And this is where David is, realizing that he hasn't deserved anything. He had a life destined before him of a kind of a minimum wage, lowly job taking care of sheep. And God pulled him out of all of that and said, hey, I'm going to make you king. He didn't deserve it. He never wanted it. He never anticipated it. And here he is at the end of his life. And God has been so good to him. And he writes this. And there's a whole bunch in here that we can look at. But we're going to look at just one verse, in verse number 4. He says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. If you're making a decision to follow Jesus, or you are following Jesus, we just have to realize and understand that, you're going to walk through some treacherous moments. There are going to be bad things that happen. The Bible says it rains on people who follow Jesus and people who don't equally. It just rains. And there are some things that are just the pattern of life that happens. Every single one of us are going to lose a loved one. It's going to happen to all of us. Every single one of us, we're going to die one day. It's going to happen to all of us. And whether it happens and we're expecting it, or it happens in tragedy, it's going to happen. All of us are going to walk through these treacherous moments in our life. And we can't escape that. And God doesn't, it's not like our life is a Olympic sport, the curling event. And as we go through, and God sends us away in our life, that he sends people before us with little brooms, making sure there's not one imperfection in our way. And we just gracefully slide through life. It's more, maybe better example is like a motocross track. There's going to be moments you're flying high and you're doing the Superman and stuff, but there's going to be moments where there's crashing, and God's going to come with his stretcher and his ambulance cart, and he's going to shovel us off of the track and begin to piece us back together. Think about, so what is the shadow of death? I wonder if in that imagery we don't really understand it. As I begin to think about that and think about our moment, the shadow of death, without Jesus, those are the things you cannot escape. This week there's been a bunch of things happening, and one of our families from the church, they're not here this morning because they're at Boston Children's Hospital because their young toddler was having headaches, and when they brought him in for a scan, he had a tumor on his brain. So they immediately brought him to Boston, and after they did MRIs, they discovered it wasn't a tumor, but it's a cluster of blood cells, and so he's going in for brain surgery tomorrow morning. So you can pray for little Ben Shear. Those are valleys of the shadow of death. Those are treacherous moments. There's another single mom in our church, and she's in stage 4 cancer. And she, again, was lightheaded and lethargic, and so they brought her to the hospital this week, and they discovered that the cancer has spread, and she has tumors on both sides of her brain. And so she's in the hospital this morning, and she's stable, and they'll be releasing her tomorrow. But for her, there's not an earthly hope for her. So she's wrestling with leaving behind a 7-year-old daughter. Those are the valleys of the shadow of death. In the last week, we've spoken with people who are considering suicide. We've helped people who are struggling with homelessness, people who have been abandoned by their family, financial crises, car accidents, infidelity. Valleys of the shadow of death. And if you're there and you're in one of those moments, the first word of encouragement for you this morning is that if there's a shadow, then there is a light. If there's a shadow, then there's a light. And Jesus is that light. And the only reason we can recognize that there's treachery is because there's something bigger and something better. And in that, those of us who've made the decision to follow Jesus, and if you've never made that decision, make that decision right now. To say, I don't want to walk through those things alone. You just make that decision in the heart right now. Jesus, I don't want to walk through that alone. I'm believing you. You're Jesus, you're the Son of God, I'm believing you. Make that decision right now. Don't wait another minute. So you're walking through those things, man, we just know and we're just confident. There, we are not alone. We are not alone. Who's with you in the dark side of the morning? Jesus is. And so David, in the valley, the shadow of death, he says this next part, I will fear no evil. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. If you know Ben's parents, Sam and Allison, I mean, they're pretty chill right now. If you're friends with them on Facebook, they're pretty calm. I'm sure they have anxiousness, but they're offering that anxiousness to the Lord. They're trusting Him. They've already gotten one good report. It's not a tumor. And we're just going to believe for another good report. I am not afraid. Sometimes you're not afraid because you're ignorant. So I'm not telling you to be ignorant. And people accuse people who follow Jesus as being ignorant. You just need a crutch. And they accuse it like, you don't know what the real world's like. And they'll accuse you of being ignorant. When you walk through the valley of the shadow of death and you have a peace that passes all understanding, people are going to make fun of you. And they're going to accuse you of being brainwashed or all kinds of different things. And this is not a lack of fear because you're ignorant. So I remember we went on a church camping trip. We don't do this anymore for insurance reasons, as you'll see. We went on a church camping trip, and I was in charge of the trip, and so I must have been 26 or 27 years old. And you're like, wow, I thought that's how old you were now. Oh, thank you. No, actually, no one accuses me of that anymore because I have so much gray hair. People, anyway, we'll get into that. But gone are those days. But anyway, we were playing kickball at White Lake State Park, and man, it was a good game. My team was winning, and when we were up to bat, I remember we were in a batter's box and 2 black bears came out into left field. And so this is awesome. I just love this, black bears in our kickball game. This is a memory. So we keep playing. We just keep playing kickball. There's 2 black bears in the outfield. We got little kids. I shouldn't tell this. So anyway, we stopped the game long enough to we're just watching these black bears in the outfield. Now, I know the statistic of black bears. A person hasn't been killed by a black bear in New Hampshire since the 1700s. So the odds are in our favor. Plus, you guys don't know this, but one time I watched a Maine Black Bears hockey game. So I feel like I'm fully qualified to take care of what's going on in the situation. Anyway, we watched them for a while. They eventually run out in the woods. We keep playing kickball. Any of the story. So I should have, honestly, I was ignorant. We should have been much more afraid. We should have all played dead. It should have been things that we did. Honestly, our team was winning so much, I think the other team already was playing dead. So this is not that type of courage. This is not ignorant. This is not where we're drinking a bunch of stuff, and so now we have liquid courage. This is a confidence in who Jesus is as the creator of heaven and earth. We aren't afraid when we know who Jesus is and when we know what he has done. Jesus defeated death. When he made the decision, he was crucified, he was dead and buried 3 days, and he made the decision, hey, I'm not going to be dead anymore, and he came back to life. He defeated death. Why am I going to be afraid in the valley of the shadow of death when I'm walking with me the Hall of Famer, the heavyweight champion of the world over death? If we think about, there's only one thing that you can't defeat, it's death. It's going to win eventually. Oh, wait. Jesus defeated that. I know him. We are friends. We aren't afraid no matter what's happening because we know who we're with. And I'll talk about that in a second. But sometimes we fear evil. Because we fear evil, we're afraid to pray. And I know there's a couple of people in here who've talked to me about this, and so I'm not picking on anyone. There's actually been a few people who've talked to me about this in the last month, so no one knows I'm talking about you right now. But I've had some people, and I asked them, can I pray for you? And there's a hesitancy there. And they're like, yeah, I guess. And so I asked, I don't have to. Why don't you want me to pray? And I say, when I pray, things get worse. And so they're afraid to pray. So I want to talk about that for a second. When I pray, it gets worse. I don't want to pray. And if you're in the valley of the shadow of death, all right, you're going through these moments of treachery, and you can't pray. Let's spin that into a completely different situation. But when someone is in an abusive relationship and they try to leave, the abuse gets worse. So sometimes people think, well, I need to stay. I need to keep things at peace because when I try to leave, it gets worse. Well, does that mean that you should stay in a mild form of abuse? Not at all. It means you're taking the right directions for freedom. You need to take those steps and get free once and for all. Don't let an increase of abuse keep you in your situation. So when you begin to pray for Jesus to help you through these situations, there is a real spiritual enemy who wants you to stay defeated. Doesn't want you walking forward in everything Jesus has for you. Doesn't want you loving Jesus. Doesn't want you free from the sins in your life, from the problems in your life. And so when you begin to pray, they're going to push back with everything they have to keep you in the life that they have control over you. Sometimes we're afraid to pray because we're afraid to get called into ministry. We're afraid to pray. We're afraid God will tell us to give. We're afraid to pray because we're afraid God will convict us of something in our life. Everything Jesus speaks to brings life. Every time Jesus speaks to you and tells you to take a step in your life, it brings life. It doesn't bring misery. It doesn't cast us into the shadow of death. It's like, hey, thanks for signing up. I love you. We're going to send you here now. sucker. Jesus isn't like that. When Jesus speaks to us, when Jesus answers our prayer, it brings life. And sometimes coming out of the valley of the shadow of death, I mean, there's all kinds of things that are attacking us through it. But remember who we're standing with. And everything Jesus does brings life. He does not make things worse for you. Jesus, I need you to heal me. How dare you pray such a selfish prayer? I'm going to pile afflictions upon you. Don't bother me. That is how we're thinking of Jesus. But that is not how he responds to us. If things get worse, then that's an attack. And you don't have to be afraid of an attack. Why? Next part of the verse. I'm not alone, for you are with me. There's a confidence that comes from walking with strong people, or people who, if you're a kid and you're with a bunch of adults, like, there is just an absence of fear. If you're an adult and you're with UFC Hall of Famer Ken Shamrock, you're just not afraid. And so last week we had a guest speaker at our church, Ken Shamrock. He was the Ultimate Fighting champion and and he's in the Hall of Fame there. And so just a big guy and he's just a fighter. And his hands are bigger than my biceps, and that's not an excuse. And I was showing my sons this, and then Ken Shamrock said they're even bigger when they're swollen. And I just think about that, like, oh yeah, he's beating people in his hands. And so, listen, as we're walking through the mean streets of Dover last Saturday night, like, I'm not afraid. Plus, I don't have any money, so I'm usually not afraid. Like, I'm going to steal money from you. Oh yes, I have invites to see him speak at church tomorrow. And so, last Sunday after church, we went to Applebee's. I'm like, what restaurant do you want to go to? How about Applebee's? So we went and ate at Applebee's in Dover after service, and about halfway through the restaurant, the waitress realized it was someone famous at the table, but she couldn't figure out who. And anyway, we're at Applebee's, and I just think, like, all right, we're walking through this parking lot. If any of these elderly people try to take our doggy bag, like Ken Shamrock's got my back, like, it's not going to happen. Nothing bad's happening here. Because we can't see Jesus, we can't really appreciate the fact that he is always there. He doesn't run from any danger. He doesn't run from any fear. And Aaron, you can come up. He is always there. He will always bring you through. If you stay with him, if you just continue following him, and you don't just bail out or take off running through the woods because things get too scary. If you continue following him, he is going to lead you to the green pastures and beside the still waters that David wrote about. You'll get there. And if Jesus leads you from some green pastures and still waters to bring you to another field, but there's some treachery along the way, don't think like he's abandoned you. And don't forget where he already brought you. He'll bring you there again. He's just leading you to a new place. And so there's no fear. There may be some worry, but we give those worries to him. We follow him through every situation, through the treacherous moments and the beautiful moments. We stay with him. You kind of have a choice to make of what you're going to do. What we don't want to do is hear something like this and be like, oh, that sounds swell. We should make a bookmark about that and stick it in our copy of Anne of Green Gables. What we don't want to do is just, like, feel good. Like, oh, that's swell. And then we walk out of here, and then it's just misery. And we're like, oh, that Pastor Nate, he said nice words. We need to begin to live with the truth that even in the valley of the shadow of death, Jesus, who defeated death, is with us. We are not alone. So how do we do that? If you're here and you've never believed that Jesus is who he is, you just make that decision this morning. Jesus, I'm going to follow you. Forgive me for the things I've done. Lead me. Lead my life. And that simple prayer changes everything. If you are here and you're kind of nominal. You believe Jesus, but honestly, you're not following him. Maybe you haven't been to church in a long time. Maybe you don't do anything but show up at church. You're not living for him. There's no following him Monday through Saturday. You just show up at church. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? We're not meant to just show up at church. We're meant to follow him. And I just encourage you, for you to take a step this week, is to sign up for Follow. We have an 8-week thing in our church called Follow. Learning to follow Jesus is the long name for it. And for those of you here, you've made the decision to follow Jesus, even if you haven't, but you think you want to, you sign up for that. And what we do is we match you up with someone in the church, and 8 weeks, an hour a week at maximum, you go through this book together. It's real easy, and it helps you. You might learn some things if you're new, but most importantly, you're going to become something through that 8 weeks. You're going to move from being a person who attends church to being a person who follows Jesus. And that is an amazing thing. That changes your life. Those of you who are so bored of church and you're so bored of me preaching right now, you're like, man, this guy's miserable. When's this going to be over? All of a sudden it moves from just being this adventure. What are you doing now, Jesus? Where are we going next? Whose life are you going to change next? How are you going to use me now? And it so drastically flips your experience with Jesus. And then, so if you're making a decision to follow Jesus, maybe you're making a decision right now. All right, I'm gonna sign up on my phone, on the internet, or on the website, or at guest services for Follow. And then maybe the next step for you is to memorize this. Maybe just this verse, or these 6 verses in Psalm 23. You're gonna memorize that. So when something chaotic happens, the first thing out of your mouth isn't kind of a bunch of cuss words. It's not like the sky is falling. But what begins to flow out of your heart is, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear, for you are with me. For you are with me. Who's going to walk with you through the dark side of the morning? Jesus is. We're going to take a minute here and allow Jesus to speak to us. The band's gonna sing a little bit, and you just close your eyes or open your Bible or write some notes and begin to figure out and begin to ask, Jesus, what do you have for me? And I'll be back here in a second.